Did Professor Walling debrief with you at all?
I forgot to ask her. I forgot to ask her anything about it. I felt like there was something I wanted to ask her, and then
it was a good talk.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's funny they got us back to back.
Yeah.
Professors.
Yeah. We spent. There was brief mention about pickles, but it turned more into like us talking about like writing, like semicolons and.
Oh, I love semicolons.
You both love semicolons.
That's right. I knew it. She seemed like a semicolon kind of person.
Yeah. Somehow we got into a talk about like the dudeness of On the Road and.
Wow.
Then something else. Actually, the first part was about like we were just talking to each other about like our journeys commuting from from hours away, and that was probably really boring for people. For people to listen to. It's just we sound like a bunch of Californians talking about which routes we take to get to the university.
That's right. Except you have to say the whatever. So I'll say the 9, and I guess people don't say that, right? You say
no. I think it's
Route
like
9.
like on the East Coast, it's more of a like we do take Route 8,
right?
Instead of like you don't say the 8.
No, I'd say take the 9 to the 84, and I'd still say that. I only realized that was weird. I'd been here years.
I mean, I suppose to the New England ear, it hits a bit wrong. Just maybe because of the amount of digits.
Yeah.
Do you think? Like, there's something about the 109 that sounds right. You know what I mean?
So it's probably a piece of Californian in me that won't go away, no matter how hard I try.
And you're from Santa Rosa or something?
Yep. I grew up in Santa Rosa.
In NorCal?
Yep. I was born in Montana, but and then lived in Pasadena for a little while as a young child. But from 4 on up through high school, I was in Santa Rosa, California.
Oh, okay.
Which is currently on fire,
yeah.
Which is hard to believe. In fact, my neighborhood, this is the only neighborhood that was affected in the 2017 fires and this fire. So in the 2017 fire, my preschool burned down, all sorts of things burned down, but one thing was my preschool burned down. And then I heard that this fire, the school where my elementary school, the road where that is, there was a fire that was on that road. So I was like, are all my schools just going to be burned down one by one? So we'll have to see.
It's like all over the coast, right?
It is, actually. And it's not just Northern California. There's also the Getty fire near the Getty Museum. Yeah. And there was also a fire in Vallejo. This one is more northerly. It's going up north of Healdsburg to Geyserville and St. Helena, up from the mountains. So the great thing is no one has died in this fire. And I don't think in the Getty fire either. So I think they're getting better at getting people out, but that means 190,000 people are currently...
And I heard there was it got pretty bad in Malibu. And
yes.
I'm just worried, I'm hoping that Bob Dylan doesn't perish in a fire too soon.
Well, it turns out that a lot of famous people were affected, particularly by the LA fires, because that was, very fancy California. Whereas, like I say, the majority of the Northern California fire is a little bit further out of town, and it's also kind of bedroom communities. But it must be hard to bear for those people who have been evacuated for the second time. And a lot of people lost their homes in 2017 and are now evacuated. So it's crazy, crazy days.
Yeah. I suppose Bob Dylan is on the road so much, he's probably not home a lot.
It's possible. I don't see him in Malibu. I didn't realize he lived in Malibu, so there you go.
He's been living in Malibu for, ever?
Wow.
Or at least, okay. The chronology of Bob Dylan, he grows up in Minnesota and he goes to New York at when he was maybe 19 or something like that. And then he lived in Woodstock, New York,
right,
for a while. And then at some point he just went to Los Angeles, and he's been living in Malibu for maybe the last 20 or so years or something like that.
Probably up, in some canyon area,
He's got a damn cliff. He owns a cliff in Malibu.
Nice.
Or something like that.
That would be nice.
The view is it's like Tony Stark level cliff looking out over the ocean.
Got
something
it.
Like that.
Yeah. Not the kind of California I'm from.
What happens when you tell people that you're from California? What kind of image do they have before you tell them, no, it's like Northern California, it's Santa Rosa?
That was very interesting to me when I would tell people I was from California, and they were always so impressed because they thought, Southern California. And for a while in college, I got such weird responses. They say, what was it like living in California? And I'd say, oh, it was amazing. I surfed to school. And people believe me. And then I would say, oh, it's California, but I live in the cold, wet, and rainy part. Because that was before I'd lived in the UK and didn't really know what it was like.
So if you surf to school, it's called the waterway. And then they all get different numbers to be assigned. Yeah, I took the...
It could happen. I bet somewhere somebody is doing it. And in fact,
I took the Atlantis 109.
I did. So where we are now, obviously, is Connecticut. But with my kids, I'm quite taken by the fact that they can, there's snow and they can sled. And the way that we would cut to their elementary school went through a trail through the woods and then down a hill, which is actually the local sledding hill. So I said, hey, one day I was like, let's sled to school. So we climbed, they got their little backpacks and we climbed the hill, and then we brought the sleds, and then we sledded down the hill to where the school was. And
is that the correct past participle of sled? Sledded?
Yeah, I think.
Sled?
I don't know. Now I'm doubting everything because I thought also that this was a great idea, but the principal was at the bottom of the sledding hill and said that was not okay. And I said, but school hasn't started. And he said it would, sort of set a bad precedent that other children might think it was a good idea to sled to school, and then it would be chaos. So thank God that didn't happen. So, but they can say that they sled. They were on a sled to get to school.
When did people stop using trash can lids as sleds? Do you know when that happened?
Oh, I don't know that, but I do know when I would visit a boyfriend that went to Hampshire College, we would sled on the lunch trays. So
and they were like big plastic real.
Yeah, just your typical lunch tray. I still have one. Hampshire College.
You have one?
Yeah.
You kept it?
I guess so. Sorry, Hampshire. They're having financial difficulties, and I feel responsible all of a sudden. But yes, they did a lot of sledding down those kinds of... Because where I was at college, there wasn't so much snow. So it was a novelty to steal lunch trays and sled down those, I guess. So, yeah. But, yeah, I would tell people that. So the California thing, even in... I could see it when people were impressed in the UK that I was from California, but when other Americans thought California was a novel thing. Nobody responds that way when you say you're from Connecticut, right? But
it could be similar in the sense that when people think of Connecticut, they think of like Fairfield County.
Yes.
Like, oh, you're from Connecticut, huh? You're rich and live in Greenwich.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not.
That's what my daughter's getting in college right now. She says, I'm from Connecticut, not Greenwich. So, but we saw a stand-up comic from Vernon a few years ago, a friend of a friend, and he did a whole bit, which I still quote from, because he said the same thing that people think that Vernon is going to be like Greenwich, and it's not. And so he said he thinks of different areas of Connecticut, that there's fancy Connecticut. So I still call places like Greenwich and Old Lyme fancy Connecticut. And then there's where he's from, which he calls classic rock Connecticut. And I was like, this is awesome because I am from classic rock California. I am not from beach California. And it wasn't really hippie California. It was more classic rock California.
Where is Vernon?
Vernon, it's out near, if you're driving from Hartford to Yukon, I think you hit Vernon first.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of, it's not exactly a bustling metropolis. And they listen to a lot of classic rock, apparently. So,
I feel like that's common everywhere.
Well,
you always find like a pocket of like dads who just listen to classic rock or something like that.
Yeah, maybe so. It's but I guess it's kind of not what you think of for Connecticut. I think people think of the Gold Coast or whatever, fancy Connecticut. And then I guess, I don't know we're sort of normal people, Connecticut. I don't know.
I tell people I'm from the poorest part of Connecticut. And
is Torrington?
Litchfield County.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I would suppose
Bridgeport? Isn't Bridgeport the least... Is the poorest city in the country, I think. Something like that. It's not good.
I mean, overall, Fairfield County is the richest county, definitely. Yes. But then I would say the wealthiest part of Litchfield County is Meryl Streep's house.
Oh, where's that? I don't even know.
Salisbury, I think.
Yeah, I know it's the state with the biggest disparity between wealth and poverty. So you can, in a relatively small space. So you're not driving for very long when everything changes. You go from... beautiful homes to people in great need.
I mean, like in Fairfield County, they still have their fair share of ghetto in like Bridgeport, but it's still like the first image you get of Connecticut. Oh, Fairfield County.
Yes.
Oh, rich people. Keith Richards and Christopher Walken live there.
Really? I had no idea.
Like, yeah.
I feel better just knowing Christopher Walken is in my state. Like, I feel more comfortable. He's out. He's watching out for me.
Keith Richards lives in like Weston.
Oh.
And then Christopher Walken either lives in Weston or Westport.
Oh, I think I've been to Westport.
There's lots of people you wouldn't think would live in Fairfield County. There's lots of famous people who live there. But then there's like little pockets all around the state that you would think, why would you live there? Like Anderson Cooper purchased a home in Litchfield.
Oh, really?
That's like a big historic estate. Mia Farrow lives in Bridgewater, which is like the very southernest tip of Litchfield County.
Interesting.
And, of course, Meryl Streep lives in Salisbury, although that's like the very corner, right up next to New York.
It's it's a New York suburb. So effectively they're living in New York, but they want, to be able to plant something.
Yeah. Or like...
or swim in their pool.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just have to wonder what those lives are like.
How long have you been living in Connecticut?
Oh, gosh. Probably now nearly 19 years. In January, it'll be 19 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've been here a while.
You escaped Y2K in California by going to Connecticut.
Well, I was living in the UK when Y2K happened. Right. So, my husband was on a Y2K project to stop the newspapers from all ending at that point. So he had to work on New Year's Eve and the millennium, which was kind of a drag. Mm. Yes, and then we came here right after that. And so I came January 2002.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've been here ever since.
Did you come here to teach at the university?
Yeah, we came for my job. So I was teaching at a university in Wales in the UK, and we just decided that it was going to be better to come back here to this country. He's English, and so he was interested in moving to America, and academic jobs can often, for me, it was going to work out better to work in this country. There, my course load was totally different. I taught 5 classes each semester, which is a lot by American standards, and then the pay is much worse. There's lots of things I liked about it, but it's harder to live. So, we had one car, we had one cell phone, which now sounds totally crazy. Like, I don't know, we got this free cell phone for, getting a particular credit card, so we could only call each other if the other one was home. We moved here for my job, and then the other reason that I accepted this job offer was that he'd always wanted to do an MBA, so he did an MBA here. And
from the Barney School of Business?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that he can do that tuition free because of my job. So
really?
They were like, yeah.
Wow.
It's so it was a benefit that we couldn't overlook because he had always wanted to do that. So
transitive spousal tuition.
It's called. What's it called? It's called
transitive spousal tuition.
Yeah, that's what it's called. But he still had to pay tax on the tuition. I remember that. But it was a good thing for him to get to do. So so we upped sticks and moved here. And by that time, my parents weren't living in California anymore. They'd moved to Pennsylvania. So they were it was closer for me to be, it's not like when they were in California where it would have been so far away. The fact they were in Pennsylvania, they're about less than 5 hours down the road. So that was good as well. From California to the UK to here in 2 easy steps.
Where next?
Who knows? Probably not much. Just like here, stay in Connecticut forever. So.
That's where, as well as you could think, like, that's where the rich, famous people, they go to Connecticut to retire.
That's right.
Christopher Plummer is just like, I'll go to Connecticut.
Yeah, I think we have no intention to leave. It's also nice because we still do have family in California, and then lots of family in the UK, and it's not a bad flight either direction. So it's good to be able to keep in somewhat contact with people. So yeah, and you're from Torrington, right?
Yeah.
And were you born there?
No, I was born in Farmington.
Oh, really?
But it's more
at UConn, at the hospital there.
I'm not sure, but I think
you don't know the hospital. You should find out.
In the end, my family and I have always lived in Torrington, but it was like, I guess they were like maybe driving home from doing something in Hartford and then had me in Farmington. But
right.
But like my older brother was born in Torrington.
So there's a Torrington General Hospital there?
It's called Charlotte Hungerford Hospital, which is kind of the big general hospital that serves like that micropolitan area.
Micropolitan? That's a word?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
In case you didn't know, Torrington, Connecticut is the core city of the largest micropolitan area in the United States.
Wow. What's the definition of a micropolitan?
I think it's population, that there's a certain threshold that it moves from like rural to town to city to micropolitan area to metropolitan.
Oh, interesting. So about how many people live in Torrington?
Nearly 40,000.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah, my experience going there is driving in, hitting the Target on the way, and then going to the Nutmeg, the school.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
perhaps the biggest thing Torrington is known for is like the Warner Theater.
Yes, and that's right. That's adjacent to where the
they're pretty much right next to each other.
Yeah.
Or like John Brown, the abolitionist.
Oh yeah.
He was born in Torrington. I guess he's featured on the cover of the Kansas album.
Oh, really? That's him, huh?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, I had a relative who went to the Nutmeg school, so I would drive to Torrington. That's a terrible commute, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It's just the worst.
Especially now that they're paving like the entirety of 44 from Torrington to Hartford.
Are they adding another lane? Isn't it one lane for a lot of the time?
I mean, like it is a mainish road.
Yes.
So you do have to like one lane it a lot of times just so that people can get through, but you're still getting paving done.
Right.
So I think they got most of it done right now. It's already terrible that the most sensible direct route to get to Hartford for me is not a highway.
Oh, really?
It's
the back streets.
Yeah, it's literally like East Main in Torrington, and then it morphs into other roads that pass through like New Hartford, Avon, Canton.
Oh, yeah. That's I can remember being very frustrated and missing the beginning of something, just because I was not prepared for the level of traffic.
Yeah.
Going into Torrington. And I had a friend who had that commute, and I guess there was one guy who drove very, very slowly every time, and he had a distinctive bumper sticker, and she noticed that this guy pulled in the gas station, and she pulled over and said, "Why do you like making so many people so unhappy by driving so slowly?" And that I don't remember the end of that story. So, and then he changed, and the world became a better place. Oh. That's traffic flowed.
And then you got a new bumper sticker that says, "I used to drive slowly."
Yeah, I may be slow.
Now I don't.
And now when I'm ahead of you, I pull over because I know I'm upsetting lines of traffic. It's hard to find that bumper sticker.
It's especially bad because one of the appeals you could say with like driving on a highway is that you're pretty much going nonstop until you get to your exit.
Right.
And taking roads that are just like going through towns, you start and stop a lot. And it really sucks for me because my car doesn't have great gas mileage.
Oh, yeah.
So it gets like 25 if I'm lucky.
Right.
And my car's, even though it's newish, I look up the specs and it's just not up to snuff.
Right.
Like it says my gas tank should be about 16 gallons, but every time I drive almost to empty, then I fill up. It only says I filled up 12 gallons.
Oh, that's not good.
And if we were basing it on the real specs,
right,
the advertised specs, I should be able to get like at least 400 miles to the gallon.
But you're not
to the tank.
Yeah.
But I barely ever get to like 350.
Oh, that's annoying.
And so And because, I'm a commuter student, first academic year, both fall and spring semesters, I was here 5 days a week, driving 50 miles every day for 5 days a week. And, I literally count the miles. The screen on my dashboard says like, oh, you have this many miles till empty. And then I literally plan out the things I do. Like I rarely ever on the weekends go drive half a mile to like the Staples to get something. Right. Because I don't want to waste that gas.
Yeah.
Because I plan things like on the way back from class, like I'm going to do this.
Yes.
Like
well, there's a Staples on the way. If you go,
No, but so I'm a film major and I like to I have to go see movies to keep my sanity, and I have to plan going to see movies in a way that makes sense. Like I might actually just yesterday. So I wanted to go see Zombieland Double Tap, the new Zombieland movie. It's not playing in Torrington,
right?
But it's playing in Barkhamsted.
Oh yeah.
Even though they're both the same chain. And I really wanted to see it, but I'm real strapped for cash. I'm like, go on the bargain Tuesdays or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like, oh, it's not playing in Torrington, damn it.
Yeah.
But if it were playing in Torrington, I would make an exception. Like, oh, I could drive on a Sunday,
yes,
3/4 of a mile to get to the theater, watch it in Torrington, and just go back home. But because it's in Barkhamsted, I don't want to risk wasting the gas just to go watch the movie.
That's frustrating.
I had, there's lots of a whole mess of logistics of trying to figure out. Actually, there's one other thing that that really complicated the whole thing because I ordered a movie online. I don't know if you ever seen it, Short Term 12.
No.
Okay. Well, that doesn't matter. It got damaged in transit.
Oh, annoying.
Open it. I'm like, oh, I have to return this. But I had to figure out do I want to do the thing where I just go to a UPS store and just drop it off? They'll package it for me.
Right.
Or package it myself, repackage it myself, and then go to my local Staples.
Yeah.
But then it's I get here really early to university despite my classes not starting till way later just because I want to get good parking, beat the traffic, and sit around and do some work for a few hours. I usually get to university at 7 or 8 a.m.
Wow.
And so it doesn't make sense for me to wait around until my Staples opens until 8 or 9 a.m. and then drive to university, or go to a Staples on the way, or go to a post office on the way.
Or Kohl's. You can go to Kohl's now.
Can
yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see a Kohl's on my way here. But
so you must not go the way. I used to go through Canton. So, but I would go that main road the whole way down, straight shot.
But also I don't want to bother my father just leaving hey, can you drop this off for me?
Oh, well, that's nice. I'm sure he appreciates it.
Because he was real pissy about it the last time I did it.
Yeah.
Even though I wrote a note. And
depends on the note, I suppose.
But I was okay, what to do? On Monday nights, I have a real late film studies class. I don't get home until 10:30. And I spent all of that night having on my package. I'm shit, it's broken. And spending the rest of the night figuring out the logistics of, so can't go to the Staples. It opens too late for me to get to the university on a time I would like to be there. And then it's trying to figure out, a UPS store, the locator is sometimes me searching for a UPS store near me, it designates a business as a UPS store, even though it's not.
Yeah.
And then I'm okay, so I have to figure out which one of these is definitely a UPS store. And so I resolved to go to the one that's near the Big Y.
Oh, yeah, that's the one I go to. Yeah, that's my neighborhood.
And so I figured, but I don't want to have to turn left into across traffic. So I'm
wait, why? Does that have to do
just because just because I want to be able to turn right into a place and not have to worry about oncoming traffic coming this way. And so I was okay, but when does it open? Okay, I can't that. And then when does it close? I'm 6:30. My last class goes until 5. So I'll leave straight after class, go to the UPS store, drop off the movie, and then get back on the road and go to drive straight to Barkhamsted to watch the movie and then go back home.
And did that all work?
It did.
Good. I was going to say, because I have to go to that UPS store, so I could take it.
And although it felt a bit trepidatious because getting out right at 5 o'clock, rush hour hits.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
And then even though I got out of the class early, like just a little bit before 5, it still felt like I kept feeling like, oh, this is taking longer than I would like to.
Yeah.
And then actually having to pull in, find parking, walking into the UPS store, waiting in line. And
there was a line? Nobody's ever in there.
Not a line, but like there was one and a half people in front of me. And
what did you do to that poor person?
There was no little person in front of me, but it's all like a second's worth of transaction.
Yeah, they have to figure it out.
And then me going back to my car, and then there was lots of cars coming this way. I want to turn right so I can get back on the road westward.
Yeah.
But then there's like this person in the left lane, like they were going to turn left out onto so it can go back east, but they have the right signal on.
Oh, yeah. It's a mess there. I've been in an accident right there.
And then mess. Perhaps this is more on me than anything else, but like me, sometimes I just have a heavy foot.
Right.
Because like a lot of it is uphill, and I was really trying to make sure I get to the movie on time, starting at 6:15. And I think I've done the drive a few times before, and it ended up kind of being like an hour. I'm like, I really want to make sure I have enough time to get to the movie.
Right.
And so, I mean, it ended up working fine, but it was still a lot of...
That's a lot of thinking you're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like, sometimes maybe your time is worth more than the effort you're putting in. How long is the commute? So door to door, how long is it typically?
I can give you a few different versions. Like on Monday nights, when I get class real late and there's like no one on the road,
right.
and like if I get if I get all like green lights and speed a lot, the absolute bare minimum is like 32 minutes.
That's awesome.
The average maybe 45 minutes.
I had a 45 minute.
And then if traffic sucks kind of bad, it's like an hour.
Yeah, yeah. I had for my first academic job, I had a 45-minute commute, and I swore I would never. This is not a good thing to say. I just couldn't. I was done. I mean, it wasn't terrible. 45 minutes is, I think, my limit. Mm-hmm. And it was the same. The only good thing about my commute was that I passed 3 castles on the way, which never happens to me in Connecticut. I could go by, I guess, there's that one down there. What's that? There's that castle. I can't remember. You know that one. Good.
No, I don't. Because I was not aware there were castles.
There's a castle. There's a Gillette Castle. Go to Gillette Castle. It's very interesting.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so no, I went by Cardiff Castle and Caerphilly Castle and this other one, Castle Koch, on the way to work, which made the 45 minutes go faster. But it's still, like if I forgot something and you leave something at home and you've got 45 minutes to get to work, that was...
Have you never like had this level of logistic thought going through your... I mean, you have kids.
Yes. So I'm always thinking about somebody always needs to be picked up and dropped off.
Yeah.
But luckily, so if I go home and there's no traffic, I could get from door to door, which never happens. But if I was here, like tonight, coming back for the reading or the open mic, the area open mic, it'll probably take me 8 minutes to get here because I live not that much further beyond that UPS store. And the most it ever is about 20 minutes. So it's a pretty sweet commute. But I do think of the logistics of like, how long it takes to get to a particular kid. And I overuse now my directions on my phone, like the things I absolutely know, but I want to, like I'll add in 3 places. So it's like, first I have to pick up this kid, then I have to go pick up that kid. And then we have to take the first kid to, wherever. So, and then I forget to turn it off. So like I'm driving up to my house and it's still telling me where to go. And I'm like, I've outsourced my brain. And sometimes I do it'll tell me to turn in a ridiculous way. And I'm like, okay, if you say so, phone. So yeah, I'm often adding up the distance to different places. And it's challenging now with our oldest daughter in Philadelphia because the traffic it can vary by hours. So, it's hard to plan because you're going through so many urban centers that it just gets jammed up. So it can be kind of grim. But around town, I feel like nothing that my kids do, it tends to be, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. But occasionally when they go somewhere, that's east of the river, people say here like it's so far. But it is kind of a drag.
Yeah. And then sometimes me trying to figure out how to operate throughout the day comes down to like the things I bring. Like you see all the bags down on this table here, plus my
and so, the lunch bag. I had one like that. Yeah, that's it's important.
I remember on days when I bring my guitar because I have guitar classes, things I usually wear are backpack, computer bag, messenger bag kind of thing around my torso, and then my lunchbox, which I usually wear around my neck.
Yeah, it's a good look.
Yeah,
it's like food is important, man.
But also, like, I have to bring my guitar if I'm doing something with my guitar that day. So that's one hand with my guitar, one hand free. But then, like today or like yesterday, if I'm podcasting someone, I'm bringing my very heavy bag of gear.
Right.
And so it's like backpack, computer bag, lunchbox around my neck, one hand with guitar, one hand with my podcast bag.
Yeah. It's interesting when there's lots of different stops along the way. So, like if my son is doing cross country and jazz band, and then he's got his trumpet and his sneakers, and then all the books or whatever, and then when I can, I like to go and write at the Yukon Law Library. But I bring enough stuff to last me all day, including like this little caddy that has room for 4 cups of tea and travel mugs. So I come in with like 4 cups of tea and a backpack, but also like all this, crap that they must think I'm moving in. But.
And then there was a day early on in the semester when I really had to make choices in terms of what to bring, because it was a day when I had all the things with me: backpack, bag, lunchbox, guitar, podcast gear. But it was raining.
Oh, it was raining. So you could live in the car, maybe?
It was raining hard, and it was still in like early September, so it's kind of hot.
Oh, that was awful. Yeah.
But it was like, there's no way I can do this and also carry an umbrella because I need a hand free. But I was like, wait. So it is raining, but it's not hot today. On this particular day, it is not hot.
Right.
Which means I can leave a couple things in my car and they will not melt.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So I resolved to like leave my guitar and my bag, my podcast gear, so I can go to class and then come back later so I can grab my guitar and podcast gear for later engagements.
Well, that in Hillier, where our classroom is, that used to be, because it was primarily a commuter school for a while, all along that building in the first and second floors, it was just a row of lockers. It was the weird, like I'd never seen that in a college before, but it looked like a high school. Mm-hmm. And then they got rid of them. And there's a little kind of display of weird things they found in those lockers because, people had not completely cleaned them out. So I want to believe there was like an old sandwich or,
used condoms.
Probably, lots of unsavory things to find years later. But, programs from old shows and weird out-of-date computer technology and stuff like that. So the lockers would be useful for somebody like you. Actually, they wouldn't because they're so small.
Yeah, I can't fit a guitar in like the average locker unless like I were a Hart student.
Yes, then you'd have a...
Then I would actually have a locker. Yeah,
they do. Yeah, my son takes trumpet lessons down there, and they do have giant lockers down there. That makes sense.
I wasn't sure if you could rent out a locker if you weren't a Hart student.
I imagine you have to be full-time. Okay. Because there's so many community division people wandering out, back and forth that I'm sure they have to limit their locker space to, full-time students. But, I don't know. So it might be worth it to ask for commuters. There's a commuter lounge, but I imagine they don't have...
I mean, there is a room 10 feet in one direction that has lockers and stuff.
Right.
But it's like, it's not used for anything at the moment. It used to be like, I'm not sure what it was, but you see people in there like maybe like they're trying to renovate it into something.
Oh, is this in the Hart School, you mean?
No, in GSU.
Oh,
where
downstairs.
Where the commuter lounge is.
Right.
Like just 10 feet like to the east. There's this big room that has lockers in it, but it's always like got the things pulled.
Oh, I wonder.
And
so they did have lockers. That's interesting.
I think there's a sign that says like it's the clubhouse. Maybe it's where like clubs can put things in. I don't know.
Maybe so. Whatever happens in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse.
No.
So that's too bad though that they don't sort of accommodate that for commuter students. But I don't know what the percentage of commuter students is at this school.
I think there's way more than I think there are, but
yeah, I think in our class alone, I hadn't realized a couple of people were commuting. I think there's 3 people in our class.
Like myself, Lorenzo, and...
I think Dom.
Yeah, Dom.
I think he commutes as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's... people really don't want to have a lot of extra debt, so I can definitely understand. Yeah, you want to feel settled when you arrive and have a place to put things, but...
I don't.
But you're right. You can live in your car once it gets cold enough, I suppose. But I'm sure you don't want to leave it.
Yeah, but then once it gets cold, it's too cold.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to leave a guitar in there and have it explode. Or
would a guitar explode?
I don't know. Wait.
I'm sure it wouldn't be good for it.
Is it?
It would warp possibly.
Yeah. Heat expands.
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
But I wonder I'm sure it wouldn't be good for the wood. Anyway.
No. I mean, maybe. I was thinking, if I brought my guitar, I don't really care about that. The one I have with me right now is a classical guitar that I bought recently that's rather impressive and expensive because...
So, you don't want to...
Because I'm trying to use it to play jazz and classical music.
Nice.
And so a steel string that sounds like crap. When, as much as I would like to bring it so I don't have to worry about it too much, it wouldn't be the best one to be using. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you must have to sort of decide what's worth it to carry around. That's why I like your solution of the lunchbox around the neck. Yep. If only I could convince my kids to do that in high school, but I can imagine.
Now, I didn't buy this lunchbox myself. It was just laying around the house, and it just happens to have this loop, so
long strap,
so I can put it around my neck. If it were a different kind of lunchbox, I don't know how it would function.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you'd have to stop eating, or you'd have to have those every day.
Stop.
It could happen. It was sad, but his lunchbox didn't have a strap, so he was no longer able to eat, and that's why I passed out on the stairs.
What kind of writer are you primarily? Are you a playwright? Would you call yourself a playwright?
That's interesting. I have probably, in terms of what I've had produced and published, my greatest output has been plays. Right now, I'm not writing a lot of plays. In fact, I'm not writing any plays. I've been more concentrating on fiction.
You're reading our plays. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I just sort of, taking a break from writing plays at the moment. But yeah, I'm definitely a playwright. I would consider myself a playwright.
More so than, say, a poet or someone who writes prose.
Oh, I'm definitely... No, well, the only one I'm not... I suppose I have published poetry, but it was so long ago that I think the internet hadn't been invented, and that is a good thing because nobody can Google my poetry that was published.
Okay.
I mean, it was fine, I guess, but I'm not a poet.
Okay.
That's just, it's something I've done, but I don't feel driven to do it.
I guess... I try to write songs, and the lyric part is poetry, you could say.
Yes.
But there's something about poetry that doesn't really agree with me.
Yeah, I guess I can appreciate it, but it isn't an artistic impulse that I have.
Yeah, me neither.
It's just not where, occasionally I'll think of something that works as a poem, but it's not something that I do typically. So really right now I'm much more interested and engaged with fiction. So in terms of what I do on a day-to-day basis, it's really I write fiction. And I haven't done a huge amount. I don't have that much interest in doing creative nonfiction either. So I really am fiction and plays.
Have you written full-length novels that have been published?
No. So the novel I'm working on has not been published. I've written short stories that have been published. But I tend to so far... The way I'm thinking of what I enjoy writing is novel-length work. So I've got 2 different projects, but the main one that I've been working on, that's been sort of taking up most of my writing time. That's kind of where I want to be when I'm writing these days. And I also really like flash fiction, so it's either novel-length or 1,000 words long, and there's nothing in between.
Right.
So it was harder for me to write sort of a short story length. I think some of the ideas that other people, their artistic impulse might have been to put into poetry, I think of it and put it into very short fiction.
Do you like the creative writing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I really enjoy teaching playwriting. Right now, it's actually true. I think I enjoy teaching playwriting right now, more than I enjoy doing it because, of course, we read it out. It's very interactive. It's also... a genre that doesn't get the focus that the others do.
Yeah.
And so it's new for a lot of people, which is exciting.
I mean, I've tried writing things in play format before, but I don't think I ever became apparent to me the way it's put together until like I really got a grip on like what screenwriting is.
Right.
And how playwriting is just like, of course I come from a film background, so I think through a screenwriting lens.
Yes.
So I think of it as screenwriting minus the screen.
Yep.
And it's more about, the characters, the dialogue between them, what's being said, but also what's not being said.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of restraint.
Yeah. And I guess you could say I'm getting better, but like this past assignment, the short play is like the first thing I've ever really written. Like, have you taken a gander at it?
I haven't looked at the one that you've uploaded now. I looked at, what you had uploaded as your idea.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think that's not unusual though. I think people, if they've written a script, they tend to have written for screen.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a format that people are all that comfortable with. And our class was no different. There were people in our classroom who hadn't really been to a professional play.
Yeah.
And that's not unusual either. So it's kind of opening up that as a genre, I suppose, as well.
What do you think about the idea I had? For the listeners, it's basically an adaptation of adaptation.
It is so meta. It's just, yes. I guess, well, I was amazed that I even got the reference because it was any film reference. It's like such a crapshoot. Like,
and that's the one you got, the meta film.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that. I love adaptation. And then there's the Charlie Kaufman link with him having gone to my kid's high school.
Yeah.
So, which is pretty cool.
Full disclosure, I haven't seen the film.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh my gosh, this is probably the only film that you have seen that I have seen that you haven't.
I know what the idea behind adaptation was.
Right.
But I haven't gotten around to actually watching it. But I wrote a screenplay last year that was basically adaptation. Like a guy struggling to write a screenplay, and then at the end he starts writing the screenplay, which mirrors what was happening at the beginning of the film.
Oh, so you keep returning to this idea of writing about writers, writing about writers. So,
by the way, I entered into the 2019 writing contest in the drama category, and it did not get anything. But even though I thought it was good.
Well, the problem is, I guess, that it's done a lot, so it's very familiar, that concept. And I think when people are trying to come up with something to write about, and they think writing, one of the problems is that writing, if you actually watch somebody write, it's not interesting. I mean, they're sort of, literally typing or scratching their head and writing something on a page. And that feeling of writer's block of not being able to write. So it's either doing something which is basically this sort of lonely activity or, kind of castigating themselves for not being able to do it. So it's a challenging thing. So I guess but I wouldn't say never write about a writer, but it is challenging when you're adapting a film called Adaptation that particular writer is so known for self-referential work.
Perhaps to prime you before you start reading it. In the original treatment, the writer is named Carly Chaffman.
Yes.
But I decided to name him Charlie.
Right.
Charlie Cage. And
right, yeah.
And then the other version of himself that he's arguing with is just Donald Cage. So that there's enough there so that people who know adaptation can laugh at themselves, but in the end, it's not crucial knowledge, I suppose. Right.
So almost like how Dominic's play, because he said it was sort of like an adaptation of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but with zombies.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really. I mean, it was just that there were two characters, two couples arguing, and there was, I guess, the flirting. So there was that, but then there was the zombies. So.
Yeah, but I think, although in my case, it's more the idea of a play about playwriting. Anyone can immediately understand all this what this is about.
Right.
But then they're like little Easter eggs, like the name of the guy or some little details that wait, this is adaptation, isn't it?
Right. And then, of course, you're also referring to a different art form. And so there's that level of like, I mean, I wonder what it would be like for you to write a play that had nothing to do
with meta-ness,
with meta-ness, like, or with cinema, that couldn't, that the theater was made for, that theater does best. So that's one of the things I like about writing plays is there are so many limitations. There's things that just don't look good on stage that just are better in other forms. And so given those limitations, what can you do? What's interesting on stage? And so often people sort of struggle with ideas which are literally like, somebody driving down an old country road and the headlights sweeping, the audience. And I was like, well, okay, that could work. But wouldn't you rather see that on a screen? And so what can we do that the stage does particularly well?
I think in my play, which I have titled Origination, it works because it is just, it's two characters, but they're both the same person, and they're arguing and he's fighting himself in order to get him to start writing.
Right.
In a way, it seems like a conflict between two people, like, hey, man, you should do this, come on.
Right.
But it is him saying to himself, hey, do this, come on.
Which was the film that he did? Was it Being John Malkovich? Which was the one where
John Cusack goes into John Malkovich's mind?
Yeah. And which is the one where they keep going back to the screenwriting seminar? Maybe that's adaptation if you haven't seen that.
That's probably adaptation.
Oh, yeah. So. Now we'll have to go back and watch that. But so it's meta on that level as well. Yeah. Like him talking about not being able to write.
And then Donald Kaufman, his fictional brother in the movie, is the one who actually does write something and is getting shopped around, getting produced or something.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I'm just saying that as one way to approach it is to try and think, what can this genre do that others can't? Instead of, thinking of, let's just say you prefer writing for the screen. It sounds like that's a pretty good chance. Thinking, okay, what if you strip away all the things that I love about writing for the screen, and what does this look like? And is this something, I don't know the answer to this, but is this something which would work better for the stage? Because one of the really interesting things about writing for the stage is that with the screen, you can show people where to look. You can do an extreme close-up. You can show the tear forming in somebody's eye. You can show, you can show all of Las Vegas, all of those things. It doesn't matter what you do on stage. You can direct it all you want, but you can only encourage. You can't force anybody to look anywhere.
Yeah.
Anything that's happening on the stage. And also, you don't have that sort of bigness of the screen. But but little gestures and little things that can happen on a stage can be so strange to watch. And so trying to figure out, okay, is this something that would work better on the stage, better than anywhere else? That's always just a fun question to ask yourself. And that through its limitations, playwriting becomes quite interesting. Because there are so many things you can't do. And even if you come up with an interesting idea, there's a play I really like by Sam Shepard called True West, where part of it you have to have 25 toasters on stage. And there's something about that. I just love it's like a great visual image. And somehow it's better to be in a room with a toaster right there because you're like, hey, that looks like my toaster. And look, there's these other toasters. And to physically see it on stage. Somebody can make toast with that right there in a way that if you saw that on the screen, it's not interesting. Mm-hmm. But then even something as simple as that, if a couple people wanted to put that on, you still got to go out and find a bunch of toasters from Goodwill or whatever and then add it all up. So there's that physical thing. You have to have these physical things that exist in the world. And people respond to it too, the little things that you do have on stage. Or the interactions, like I was talking about that play that had, which I've forgotten the name of again, there's a baseball play that was on at Theater Works where there's this naked scene and with all these men, and the audience response was crazy. They were so shocked.
Because Take Me Out?
Take Me Out, thank you, Richard Greenberg. And it was just, they were so shocked because those guys were right there. And there was another really interesting one at the Playhouse on Park that was called Red Light Winter by Adam Rapp. Funnily enough, there was a lot of male nudity in that play. And I just remember it because a good friend of mine who hadn't been to a play since The Christmas Carol shows up to Red Light Winter. And he was a little surprised because there was this guy wandering around naked for a long time. And then, so naked. And then there's another scene where another guy is messing with him. He has a bottle of milk and some ketchup. And the guy takes the ketchup, puts it into the milk, puts the top on, shakes it up, and puts it back down again. What was really interesting to me is the audience response. They were more shocked by the ketchup and milk thing than they were about the nudity. Because it was just so gross. It was physical and it was right there and you could see it happen. So looking for opportunities to make that kind of level of visceral response, this bodily response that people have in the theater, that can be somewhere that you might want to challenge yourself to go, when you're thinking about what works well for the stage. Because this idea may well work, but what about that idea might work better for a film? I mean, that sounds to me like it would work as a film.
Well, because it was.
Yeah.
Because it was
like
a
your
film.
adaptation of adaptation.
I tell you this, while I was writing it, I turned it into a writer as an alcoholic kind of cliche thing.
Right.
Although that was more because I got this spark of an idea of some kind of really striking physical moment at the end where it's like something. Oh, you want a drink? Let me help you. Grabs a beer bottle, smashes it, and tries to go at him.
Oh yeah.
In the end, Charlie overcomes Donald, and then it is not shanked. But I suppose that was me trying to figure out like some kind of big-ish climax right near the end of the play.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the class's response is to it. But in terms of your own work, like I say, kind of looking for ideas that generate from what would you find interesting to see on the stage. Actually, it's making me think of, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting it? It's one of my favorite movies. Who's the guy the director? He did like Fantastic Mr. Fox and
Wes Anderson.
Which
movie is it? Is it Moonrise Kingdom?
No.
Is it The Royal Tenenbaums?
No. Before that.
Bottle Rocket?
Nope. After that. The one about the school, the kid getting kicked out of the school. Rushmore. Thank you. So that was hilarious how he would do these crazy adaptations of like Apocalypse Now or whatever it was, but for the stage.
Yeah.
And it was almost like it could never really exist because you could never do it as well as you would want it to be with the helicopters and, whatever. Yeah. And it was almost like he was talking about like artistic conventions, but at the same time, he uses a lot of visual art in his direction as well. So I don't know. It's just an interesting. I think that, in the same way I might have a flash fiction sized idea, there's certain ideas that I've had where I was like, oh, okay, that'll be my next play, but it would not work for fiction. And so I tend to like think of it in terms of what does this genre do well, rather than do I want to work with theater people or do I want, I don't think of it that way. I think of it like, where does this work need to be to make it the most like itself that it can be. And so I would argue that what makes those scenes funny where this kid is not just that he's adapting these crazy things and everybody's following him because that's the genius of that movie. It's sort of like just how crazy it is to think that you could stage these works in that way, something to think about anyway. I'll have to let you know by, Monday when we look at it. But a lot of people don't think of playwriting isn't what they necessarily think of first. And in many ways, that's why I love teaching it, because I'm teaching it next semester. And
by the way, I might be taking playwriting with you next semester.
Totally. You have to. There's like 3 people in our class who are coming for that. So no, it's fantastic because also everybody gets involved in it because you have to read the lines out. It doesn't work unless you read it out.
Yeah.
And so we become more engaged, and you'll find yourself having more opinions about a character whose lines you've read. And if it doesn't sound like the way somebody really speaks, you really feel it if you yourself are articulating it. Mm-hmm. So there's a level of engagement that's added there, I think. So I really enjoy teaching that class. So I probably enjoy teaching playwriting more because of that active element. But personally, right now I'm enjoying writing fiction more than thinking of the stage.
You're also teaching acting next semester, right?
Yep.
And I would totally take that if I didn't have another class that was conflicting with it. But like I remember the first bit of things we did in the drama unit of our creative writing class, you told me like, oh, you should totally take an acting class because the way you read.
Yeah, you have a good way of reading. It feels very natural.
I've acted in I'd started my own short film
cool.
based on that screenplay I told you about a few minutes ago.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not great, but I even tried to be in the comedy improv
group.
You
tried out for Stop Laughing Mom?
And I mean, there's something about acting that draws me towards it, but also not.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
In the case of improv comedy, I have wit.
Right.
Like if you listen to a podcast where me and the guest are particularly riffing back and forth, just trying to make each other laugh, there's wit there, and I can improvise being just me with someone with someone else. But acting improvisationally, trying to find a comedic edge to it.
Right.
It's not. I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's such different skills. Like, if I would prefer, I like improv more than I like straight acting, but I'm a fine actor, but I'm also more interested in the creative process that comes with improv than I am with acting. Because acting, to me, there's a whole level of just trying to interpret and do justice to the character and the script, which is great. I like with improv that whole idea of following the follower, that you're sort of listening to what somebody else says.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that very much.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
I was more focused on like if we were doing a game where you tag in and out to to build a scene, or not
like freeze.
Yeah. And where you tag someone out, then you start a new scene based on the positions you were previously in.
Yeah.
And
we used to call it tag improvs growing up.
I was more focused on what I would say first to make to establish the scene, and not listening to what the other person was saying to build the scene. Yeah,
that's what I say, because we do an improv unit, and you don't try to be funny. That's the first rule.
Yeah.
I really like that, because if you're just following, you're taking the story wherever the two of you go, and you really have to listen to the other person. So the one thing that I've been doing to sort of stay creative, and because that's the difference with writing fiction, is it's very insular. It's just you and whatever you're writing, and it's not like theater where I can talk to other people. It can be directed, and I can talk to the actors, and it's part of because I've been writing more short plays, it'll be part of an evening, and there's other playwrights. With fiction, I'm quite happy to just sort of spirit myself away and write, but it's kind of like, you got to get out there in the world sometimes. So I've been going to CT Improv in Hartford. They have a team crash on Thursday nights where it's kind of for people who know improv and don't really need to take another class, but you can just be part of their group for the night, different house comedy groups, and you just rehearse with them. You just do whatever scenes they have. And so that to me has been like a creative outlet. Like, I'm not interested in ever audition. I mean, maybe I would one day, but auditioning and performing, I don't necessarily need to do. That's why with acting, I enjoy it, but I don't feel the need to be up on the stage.
Yeah.
But there's something about that creative process where you have to really listen to the other person. You don't try to be the funniest. You just try to follow just build that world. You explore and just follow the follower. You're always listening to the other person and going where they're going. And you're not jumping in with that. I mean, some people do jump in with that first line, and that's what's important. But you have to understand that the other person could come back and put you in a totally different place. And then you have to retool and think, okay, this vision I had is gone now. We were going to be, on a pyramid, and now we're going to be at the dump, and I got to go to the dump. So I really enjoy that. I love that collaboration.
Yeah, as much as I'm such a geek for film, and I appreciate every different aspect that goes into making a film, including like actors, there's something about the idea of acting that, as much as I would love to be an actor, so I could like be the jackest of all trades,
right?
In terms of filmmaking, There's something I can't quite get at acting.
Right.
And I appreciate it on one level, but then like once I'm watching someone act, but not in a production, in a finished product, it feels weird to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that, but for cinema, what would be your ideal role? Director or screenwriter?
Writer, producer, director.
Like Quentin Tarantino, does he do that? I don't know.
And also like composer.
Oh, wow. So it's you're like a one-man band.
Well, I mean, sometimes I have to be. So like that, the short film I made about a guy trying to write a screenplay, I was a cast and crew of one.
Right.
So I was writer, producer, director, actor, sole actor portraying two parts of this guy looking at himself trying to write, and all like cinematographer and editor. And I would have composed music if I had the time and ambition to do it.
Right.
But also it didn't feel, that particular project didn't feel like it needed music, so I didn't do it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which, by the way, it's really hard to be cinematographer and actor at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say. And then, yeah, just the logistics alone. But if you had to choose one, would you write or direct?
Probably direct.
Right.
Being a director. Because I suppose it's, I haven't worked with actors in a capacity that matters yet. Right. But maybe that's a step I have to take in order to fully grasp and appreciate the art of acting.
Well, that's when I get cinema majors.
I've been to like casting calls and I see people act for a minute or two, and at some point I think it's because it's such a vulnerable position.
Yeah,
where you have all these people here watching you act for a couple of minutes, but this person might be doing this scene that goes on for a bit long, and then people kind of check out.
Right.
And then I felt bad because like I'm aware of it in the moment, but I'm like, yes, I'm sorry, but I feel I'm checking out right now.
Right. Yeah, it is very vulnerable, I suppose. And I think so when I get cinema majors who take the acting class, they usually do it because they want to know what it's like. It's not because they're interested in acting as well. They tend to do it because they want to know what it's like to have that responsibility to carry it through their own acting.
Yeah.
And it's a very different position to be in. But directing, I feel like I like being on the directing side, I think, more than the acting side because to me it's more of the creative vision that I'm comfortable with. I guess that whatever acting like skills that I have, I don't find it as satisfying. You know, even if I were a fantastic actor, I think I would find that less satisfying than directing a really good play.
Yeah.
Or, and then writing it is, also up there for me. But, it's, that's the thing about the theater is that it is a collaborative art on every level. And so.
Well, film too.
Yes, absolutely.
Although suppose it might be more challenging given that like theater, it's a performance that takes place in real time. Everyone has to be on their game. But in terms of like film, it's I suppose it is people in real time trying to capture a performance with all the right equipment doing the right things.
Right.
But then I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting, especially on a film set. What I hadn't anticipated. So my daughter was in a film at UConn through the puppetry program, and it was very sweet. She was, I think, 9 at the time, and so I went on set and, just was wrangling basically her, just making sure that she was well fed with her donuts and anything else, and because she was the only kid, and except for there were some extras on this one day, and what I hadn't really realized, first of all, the puppetry people are fantastic. If you ever get the chance to meet anybody from that puppetry program, you should I was
thinking of podcasting like whoever's head of puppetry.
Oh, you totally should. Like whoever you can get to talk to over there, because talk about a collaborative art. So what's very interesting is that if somebody has a project, you need the other people. You need their hands in a puppet. You need them to build the tracks so they can slide along. You need them to build the scenery, all these different things. But then what I hadn't realized was, they would film my daughter again and again from all these different angles, and the grip's there and these puppetry people are there, are these weird angles holding up the puppet. And I loved being in that environment because everybody had their craft and they all had to do it. And in the moment, they had to make it work. The lighting people, the people who had done the costumes, whatever. And it didn't feel like the acting was coming from, like, there was one little girl and then all of these people who were voicing the puppets. And so they're hidden in a sense, mm-hmm. but they were still kind of trying for this artistic vision. But then so much of it happens, in the editing and putting it together and putting the music there, that there's something about theater that I like, that the magic is right there. But it was incredibly special to see how much goes into making a short film. It was a very intense few days.
Yeah.
It was a good experience for me to get to be on a film set, even a short film, and kind of understand what film actors go through, because I'd seen what stage actors do all the time. It's so different, though.
Yeah, like if you're acting in a film, you have to be able to give a good performance, but also have it be consistent in between different shots. Right.
Absolutely. And, kind of stay in that same position. And then they might have you deliver it multiple times.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting because you might deliver the line, that of course, it's all out of order. And you have to build up the emotion for that one particular line, even though there's been nothing to create it.
Yeah, like based on like how production scheduling such works out, the climax of a story might be the first thing you shoot.
Right. And it was fascinating to watch, but I thought I prefer sort of watching the organic build throughout a production mm-hmm. to see how an actor would get there. But it gave me a lot of respect for people who can just, film that climax of the scene, or the love story that you see them after they've fallen in love, and happens. That was they've just met or something. I got to have respect for actors who can just walk on set and do those things. So
yeah,
it was a very fun experience to be there. It taught me a lot about acting and what acting can do. But this particular acting class, it's stage acting, just because that's what I can. Do.
Well, I mean, that's your wheelhouse.
Yes, so. And it's it's what we can manage too, because a lot of people don't have a lot of experience, and so we sort of start from the ground up, and they do a monologue and a very short scene and then a longer scene, and that is enough. If I added in acting for the camera, that would be a whole nother issue.
Yeah, I feel like I would be a terrible actor, though.
You never know.
I mean, I'm not in control of my body. Yeah. But also, I can't even imagine like what the students in actor training go through, because there are entire classes devoted to movement,
right,
speech, voice, and you have to really like take care of yourself.
Yes,
because your body is your instrument. It's what the acting is portrayed through, and I don't take care of myself. And you would think like I would at least, as someone who's a musician and semi-professionally speaks into a microphone, that I would like take care of my voice.
Right.
But I really don't. I kind of try to, but not really. And sometimes I feel like most of the time, for one, I don't feel like my voice sounds nice or very good.
But there's lots of courses that people take, and all that kind of stuff. But it also is, and back to the actor training point, they're being trained to go out and land jobs, and so there's certain things that they have to be able to do.
Yeah.
I think of the music theater students because they have the acting, but then they've got the singing and they've got dance, so they're taking ballet classes. So I taught modern drama, and most of the people in the music theater students who had me were the ones who could take the advanced tap class, so they were available to take my course, so they would go to tap class, I think, before they saw me, so they had to have all these things under control, because if you show up to an audition, you've got to be able to do the dance part, you've got, they've all those things. So there's a lot that's being asked of them. but their creative process and the way that they look at a text is through that idea of like, how can I embody this? You know, what would I do if I had to read this at an audition? So it's quite interesting that it is very practical. They're thinking about, you know, what jobs they'll land after they do their degree. So you can build up those skills. It's just that they're on a course where they are being assessed on these things. You know, it's part of what they do. So
yeah, no one's grading me on my podcast.
What would you grade yourself though?
Some better than others.
A B-.
Like holistically so far. I would say I would give it a solid C+.
Oh.
Just because like I've realized now I'm trying my best to like produce the episodes.
Right.
But I mean, if you think as a musician, I would have experimented with recording and such. But like, this is me doing the podcast is my push to get me into doing it.
Right.
And I have no idea what I'm doing. Like,
but you're dropping them pretty regularly. I mean, they seem to.
I mean, like, every week. But that was because like I started doing them in the summer and I had like a dozen before I launched it on September 1st.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
And, like, so I'm glad. Like,
don't grade me, man. I don't want to know.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad
I pass fail.
Like, I'm glad I did that because the first recordings I produced, they sound like dog shit, unlistenable. They would make your ears bleed. But I mean, like, it's gotten better, but I still think they're terrible because I really have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I was listening to some of the episodes in the car the other day, flipping between like the ones that are in my Dropbox folder that have not been released yet, and like the ones that are actually on like in the feed, the podcast feed, and noticing how like some of them have some clicking that goes on that are present on like the Dropbox files, but then the actual feed they're not there, but then the files in the Dropbox folder sound okay aside from that, but then the actual episodes I hear some distortion going on that I don't hear in my editing or in like the files are in the Dropbox folder.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're fixating on just the technical piece of how it sounds.
Yeah, because if people's ears bleed from listening to it, that's not great.
No.
And so, but of course, I have no idea what I'm doing in terms of.
Well, you're self-taught, so you know it's that's the thing. I mean, you know, if you're going to grade yourself on not meeting some sort of established criteria, that's one thing, but you also need to keep in mind that you should be grading yourself on the self-starting nature of it and finding people to talk to and, you know, because it sounds like you've done all sorts. So maybe you shouldn't grade yourself so harshly or just do it pass-fail. So you pass.
They're released, pass. The podcast is up and there are episodes being released, pass, I guess.
Yes, but, exactly.
I mean, how
many people are saying, oh, I should do a podcast someday? Those people failed, you know?
I mean, there are some...
not like in a larger sense, but they failed to upload their podcast.
In terms of, you could say, content, I'm proud, you could say. Like, to the point where I do find when I do listen to back to the episodes to make sure, like, they're playing okay in my car or whatever, or while I am editing them, I do enjoy the conversations.
Right.
I think the podcast overall, holistically, the show would be great if it was just me and the guests trying to make each other laugh the whole time.
Right.
I think that's a good hour spent.
Yeah, but, absolutely.
I mean, I do appreciate like the more serious, deepish talks I get into with guests.
Yeah.
But
I think it's kind of like, don't your conversations just take you where they go, you know?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do feel the conversation is deflating a bit because I'm not sure how much more I can expound upon whatever we're talking about. And I do ask like a question just to move it along.
Right.
But
so do you prefer the person you're interviewing to ask you a question, or do you prefer?
I prefer, I mean, the idea is just that it's just a conversation between people.
Yeah.
And so I would prefer it just be a conversation, which means it's not just me like interrogating you about your professional life or something.
Right.
But like you can ask me questions about whatever. It doesn't even have to be particularly about anything serious or specific. Like,
why do you like Who's Next?
Who's Next, the 1971 album by The Who.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, there's something about I started listening to that at the right age where I was just getting into classic rock and whatever. And it's just like, I listened to that a lot. That's my favorite Who album. And you would think it might be Tommy or something, but...
It's a great album.
Yeah, the succinctness of the album, the tracks that are made, incorporation of like synths that Pete Townsend did was... it hit me in the right way when I heard it.
Right.
So
no, I was a big Who fan. So
okay.
And when you said that, I was like, wait, is that the one that I had to look and see what the track list was?
With, the one with like Bob O'Reilly and Won't Be Fooled Again.
Bargain. I like Bargain.
I like Bargain too. And I mean, all the tracks are great.
It really is. Yeah, they were fantastic. So we have the Who in common, even if So yeah, no, I just heard you say that, and I was like, I just thought it was an unusual pick. If I said what a current college student, what a good an album that they would mention, I was just sort of surprised.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't listen to classic rock a lot anymore. It's more like I listen, maybe podcast, but which is not a genre of music, but like I listen to a lot of classical music or ambient music,
right?
Because it's I think it's more me trying to find stuff to listen to that's kind of background music that puts me in a trance so I can like get some work done while listening to it.
What about jazz? Do you listen to jazz? Is it too distracting though?
Jazz, certain types of jazz.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to like Miles Davis Kind of Blue, it's very laid back, real accessible kind of it. I don't want to say this disparagingly, but it does become wallpaper music at some point. But then if you're listening to like Giant Steps by John Coltrane, it's like, or any kind of bebop, it's a very involved kind of music. It's not the kind of thing you'd put on in the background. It's something it's a musician's kind of music. It's what like pretty much all jazz musicians who come up nowadays and go to like music school, they're like being taught like the bebop tradition, because that's the most like, if you can play bebop, you can pretty much play anything.
Oh, interesting. I wonder there's a big jazz program at my kids' high school, so I wonder what they're doing there. I don't know. So I know very little except for what
they're probably not doing bebop, but like I imagine if you're in high school, the trajectory you're trying to go is just like to learn the basics and how like learn these tunes and learn the changes, learn how like the functional harmony works and how to improvise over the tunes.
They start improvising in middle school, so they do like an after school improvising class. So I was interested because I love jazz, but I can't get a lot done usually if it's on. It's not like you can multitask and really listen to jazz.
Yeah, no.
I'm not sure I would listen to the Who in the background either. I feel like
I've done it. It's
So, it struck me when I was listening to your old podcasts.
Old?
Well, old, a week old.
I mean, that one was, yeah. But we've been going on for a while. I think, I'm not used to having like such an open-ended kind of time. I mean, we scheduled this for like maybe an hour and a half, less than that.
Yeah, something like that.
But then usually I have an out because like I have to get to class. But then
if I've ceased to be interesting, I totally get it. It's totally fine.
No, I mean like, do you have anything to do? Do you have to?
Let me check my phone, see if anybody didn't get picked up. It says, my husband is saying, "What time are you home and are you out tonight?" And that was like 20 minutes ago. No, it's all good. My kids are being picked up by others, and I put on the calendar that I hadn't told him I was going to the open mic tonight, but I put on the calendar so we live our lives by Google Calendar. So,
okay.
So I'm not in a desperate hurry if there's anything else we could
it's just
cover.
this is on the longer side of episodes right now.
You can always cut out anything I said that was boring. She talked about playwriting. Get rid of that. California, not so much. Strange love of the Who.
I don't know. I mean, the way I edit this down, it's like removing particularly long pauses.
Right.
And
got it.
Me if I happen to be tripping over my words way too much.
What if I'm tripping over my words? Make me sound very articulate. That's all I ask. Make me a better version of me. Super Erin.
I also try to do that for the guests as much as I can. But.
So make me sound very, tall and high IQ. I don't know.
How do I make you sound tall?
You've got the machine, man. I just speak into the mic, and it's your job.
How do you know from sound, hearing someone talk, that they sound tall?
I probably haven't listened to enough podcasts to answer that, but I think it's probably an attitude, right? People sound
looking down on people. I'm so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, she sounds like she's a 5'8", but I have it on good authority that she's like 5'6". So don't trust. She's playing above her height. If you listen to a lot of podcasts, probably you start to have opinions about,
or like a preconceived image of what they look like.
Right. I was trying to work out what the recording studio guy looked like. I was actually trying to figure out how old he was, because when he was talking about the different AC/DC albums, I was thinking of the music that would be playing at my junior high, and trying to figure out, I wonder if this guy's my age. So I wondered.
He might be around there.
Yeah. I looked on the website. I didn't see any pictures. So I was like, yeah. Then I thought, yeah, not as interesting as I thought it would be. So, yes. Yeah, maybe people I know that for audiobooks, and we know all about what Professor Cinch thinks about audiobooks. People review them by the voice, because, a bad voice can make an audiobook really difficult to listen to.
Yeah,
or a bad recording. I listened to a terrible recording of an audiobook of Catch-22, which I loved so much that I listened to this terrible recording of. Because,
who narrated it?
Oh, I don't know. It was something I got out of the library, and it had been recorded. It sounded like it had been recorded in the 70s by somebody inside of a garbage can, eating cheese at the same time. I don't know. It was bad, but I loved the book so much that I just listened to it twice in a row. I think it was on cassette tape when I listened to it. So, but I can remember sitting waiting in the parking lot for whatever was going to happen next.
Sometimes people tell me, there was one time when I was showing someone my podcast and they were playing it through their computer. Other people were hearing it. And they were like, "Oh, Benson, you have such a great voice for this internet radio thing."
Interesting.
And I thought to myself, no, I don't. Yeah. For one, I don't know how to EQ properly the recording. And so it does. First of all, it doesn't sound great there. But also, I don't like the sound of my own voice. Not like
right.
It's not the usual.
I don't like the sound of your voice either. I've always wanted, since the moment you showed up in my class. No, I don't think anybody likes the sound. Does anybody like the sound of their voice?
No, I'm pretty sure no one does. But for me, it's not because the usual, I just don't like the sound of. No, it's because I recognize the particular qualities that I don't like about my voice.
Got it.
Like, I don't like how there's a very dark color to my voice.
Really?
Is there not?
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. I had not pondered it.
I think it's more because, not very fit. And there's been a lot of not taking care of my throat.
Right.
In terms of speaking, or having my head in a particular position when I'm sleeping, or laying down, or leaning on something, to the point where it hurts keeping my head up right now. And
wow.
it's just that, and as much as I would love to be a great singer, I don't think I have the actual physiology, the correct physiology for it. I think I need a differently shaped nose.
Really?
In order to get the nasal resonance I would want to.
Okay.
As I understand it, one of the most important things in order to get proper projection in terms of speaking or singing is air passing through your nose. Right. And I don't think I have the correct shape of my cranium that would allow for a good amount of that.
So if you were going to grade your own cranium, you would only give it a B-. You were just
that cranium, it's real good at math, but not nasal resonance.
Yes. So yeah, maybe out there somebody listens to a lot of podcasts and they do a nasal resonance ometer, and they rate people on how their resonance is. But yes, we'll hope that they don't judge us too harshly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe it sounds like you're judging your own podcasting very harshly.
I'm my own worst critic.
That's, you should be glad you're...
I'll write a review on iTunes on my own podcast. This shit sucks.
This Benson guy, I don't even...
Wait, isn't that the... It says Benson. Isn't he the guy? It's called The Podcast with Benson.
It's crazy. It's such a coincidence that he called it that, and that's actually his name. What are the chances? So, yeah, I think you should probably be a little nicer to your podcast. Don't review yourself. Or review it very nicely.
Well, I mean, if anyone happens to like the sound of my voice, congratulations. But
I think it's pretty universal that people tend to not like the sound of their voice.
Yeah, but of course, in my case, it's because I know what, if I had a nice sounding voice, how the mechanics would work in order to produce that.
Right.
But also I don't like being such a baritone or bass baritone or something like that. Right.
So if you were singing, would you be though? Or is it just the way
I think I would be. But I mean, based on the color of my voice and where my tessitura lies, I think, yeah.
Well, there you go.
But
so it's just as well that this is not an entirely sung through podcast. Because that would be... actually would be terrible. You would not want me to.
I think I've only sung a line on the podcast.
I thought you were going to sing the line from your song that you wrote. The one that was like "Fly Me to the Moon," sort of.
No.
No. Well, I've never written a song, so I'm happy to. I will sing to you right now every song I've ever written, and it will be glorious.
If you hear
it just happened.
If you hear the one that's the one before Dr. Cinch's episode. It's with a friend of mine where he got into this thing doing Neil Young impressions, and I harmonized with him on one line.
Oh, yeah. No, I started with Dr. Cinch and then moved my way up. I was cribbing to make sure, I knew the kind of thing you would ask. But it didn't help me at all because you might ask anything. So it was like, trying to cram for actual life, not knowing what would happen to you the next day. So I guess any question might be asked.
Yeah.
The only thing I saw in common was that you asked about where people came from and where they'd gone to school.
Yeah,
so
because
I had to look that up, make sure I knew it.
You knew where you were from?
Oh, the past is so long ago now.
Well, I mean, that's more because if you were to read the description of the podcast on where it is on like iTunes or whatever,
right,
it says, the reason I'm doing this is to feed my curiosity, connect with people, and sometimes get out of the house.
Oh, right. So, yeah. Well, this works. It's a very nice conference room.
Yeah, it is.
On Mars. See, we can say we're anywhere. This is a great space station.
No, but yeah, when it does get interviewee, it is more to feed my own interest and curiosity about the person.
Right. Like you were asking Dr. Cinch about, teaching and, what sort of MA you have to know. I thought, well, thank goodness he's not asked me that because I don't even know.
You don't even have an MA.
I got nothing.
You don't even have an MA.
I don't. That's true. I have no MA. It's a sore spot. And no MFA either, which I really wish I had done. I'm okay, I think, without the... I should have done the MA, but they let me skip it. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So.
Which I spent this whole episode not even mentioning that you have a PhD in what would the area be called?
Well, it's in an English department and it's modern drama. So
okay.
I wrote my it's my husband calling. I wrote but I'm not going to answer him because my thesis was on feminist theater. Is it unprofessional to be podcasted and to text your husband at the same time? I have to tell him where I am. But so I did. So I was trying to decide, funnily enough, between doing an MFA in playwriting or doing a PhD in English. I decided that it would be a better career move to do a PhD in English, right. And so that's what I did. And then, but yeah, you're right. So I did my PhD in the UK, which is. It's kind of like having a very expensive library card. There's no classes.
Yeah.
It's all sort of self-starting. And there are taught MAs, and I thought it'd be faster and more efficient to go straight to the PhD without the MA, but I really should have done, and I did end up sitting in on a lot of the classes, but it's not the same as being, the student there too. I'm sending a text that says I'm podcasting. So I don't have an MA, but I wish and actually I was right not to do an MFA in playwriting. I think in the end that was not have been the right move for me. I do wish I'd done an MFA in fiction just because that's where my strongest interest in creative writing wound up, and so that would have been fun to do.
Okay.
But I'm probably too cranky to go back and do it now because I'd feel like I think I wouldn't be the best student of all those kinds of things.
All right.
I have too many opinions.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like it would have been way funnier if we actually did go through the whole episode, not even mentioning like where you went to school or.
Oh right, yeah, we should have done. Or I could, but you don't know that
you have a doctorate.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's probably not the most. There's not a lot of mileage you can get out of that in terms of a podcast. Not so much you can say, really.
I mean, like in the case of like Dr. Cinch's episode,
I think you sort of mentioned. You talked a lot about other things.
Yeah,
I think you talked about how he chose. Yeah, no, that's right. Because I was interested that his parents had gone there, and that he chose how he chose Michigan. That was interesting to me.
Although I suppose we can get into your educational, professional background like on a different episode.
Oh gosh, I don't know if you'd want to have me back. I feel like I need to do some, something exciting. To
have something to plug, like you write a new play.
Yes, something, or like bake a pie or something. Hey, come stop by and have this fantastic pie made.
You should. It'll be a while until Professor Walling's episode goes up, but we decided. We were I mentioned to her about the area open mic, and then she said something about how, what if there was a way for you to release this episode in time to promote your appearance at the open
fantastic.
mic.
Yeah.
But that's like...
Oh, wait, so you're going to be there tonight? You're performing? Oh, well, I'll be... Yeah, if I ever... I might not have a chance to go home beforehand, but I will be there for the first hour, so I hope you get in early.
Yeah, and then I delineated how, your episodes will be going up around the beginning of 2020, like nearer the spring.
Right.
And I was like, well, do you have anything to plug? In the spring. She's like, well, no. And then we wound up we resolved that her thing to plug on her episode is the fact that she was on the podcast.
Oh, fantastic. See, you're back. It's meta again,
So, rewind 10 seconds. You can hear me on the podcast again.
Awesome. So yeah, not until spring. Okay. So this will be like a distant memory.
Yeah.
We'll wonder what we possibly could have said during this time.
Yeah, and then you'll forget most of it, and I can edit it down, and you won't notice.
Well, I didn't say that.
No, you won't remember what's not there in the episode.
True. Yeah, probably. I probably won't even remember what is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll remember that was, it was in the fall, and it was during the fires, and we were in the playwriting part of the course.
Yeah.
And then I can listen to it over and over again.
Because you love hearing yourself talk.
Grading my own voice, hoping for that B-. And
then grading my voice,
just keeping on, just grading them all.
Well, I think we stop here.
Okay, cool.
Congratulations on the longest recording I've done so far.
Wow. Wow. Was it worth it though? I feel like I needed to be more interesting. I could have done something. I don't know. Something fascinating. Impressions of an English professor. Make fun of the way Californians say, take the 9 to the 84.
We just producing an audio-only form of a Californian sketch.
That's right. That's hard to do, though. I feel like I'd need the blonde wig to make it happen.
Well, what?
And a terrible California accent.
Yeah. But, all right.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank me. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
No problem. I crossed the hall just for you. All right. Thank you. Okay, take care. That's cool.